So we already said that in operant conditioning, behavior can be modified by reinforcements and by punishments. So now we need to define punishments. Here we go. Here is the definition of punishments. So they are any stimuli that decrease the rate of behavior. Again, the key word decrease. So this means that you want a behavior to be decreased, to be taken away, to lessen, regardless of what that behavior is, whether it's good or bad. So again, let's think of this in the field of education and say you want to decrease what you consider bad behaviors, right? Talking during class, maybe saying some bad words during class. But it doesn't have to be bad behaviors, right? We could also decrease good behaviors. Again, why would a teacher do that? I don't know, but still we could do it if we wanted to, according to operant conditioning and punishments. So a teacher could decrease the good behaviors of, cleaning up around your desk or, taking turns when reading a passage with a group. So we could decrease what we consider good or bad behaviors. It doesn't matter what the behavior is in terms of good and bad, it just decreases. Now, just like before when we talked about positive and negative reinforcements, positive and negative mean the same thing when we talk about punishments. It's not good and bad, it's about adding or removing. So let's look at what positive punishments are. Positive punishments are when you add something to decrease the rate of the behavior. And of course, negative means you're removing something or you're taking something away to decrease the rate of the behavior. And then again, notice that positive and negative have absolutely nothing to do with good or with bad. Okay, so let's look at some examples of positive punishments. Again, you're probably thinking punishments aren't a positive thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with the good and the bad side, right? So first, punishment means decreasing the rate of behavior, and of course, positive means you're adding something to decrease the rate of the behavior. So let's look at a couple of examples. So in the first example, let's say you want to decrease a daughter's missing curfew. So dad is going to give her extra chores. Dad doesn't want his daughter missing curfew, so to decrease that behavior, he adds something. He adds chores. Let's look at another one. Right? So to decrease temper tantrums in public, grandma might give a few spanks to her grandchild. Grandma doesn't want her grandchild throwing these temper tantrums in public, so to decrease that behavior, she adds something, and she adds a spanking. And our last example, so to decrease a young man speeding in a school zone, a police officer is going to give a ticket. Right? So society doesn't want people, speeding in school zones. So to decrease that behavior, a police officer adds something, a ticket. So again, in all of these examples, dad, grandma, and the police are adding something. They're adding chores, a spanking, and a ticket. And why are they doing it? To decrease the likelihood that somebody might miss curfew, have temper tantrums, or speed in a school zone. Okay, we're still talking about positive punishments. Keep in mind that we could add something to decrease a behavior that we as a group might say is a good behavior. So remember, these terms have nothing to do with good and bad behavior per se. We're just talking about behavior. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a boyfriend and a girlfriend who are saving up to get married. And the boyfriend loves to give his girlfriend flowers. But she doesn't like it because she wants to save money for their wedding. So to decrease the behavior of giving her flowers, she adds something, right? A boring lecture about financial management. So to decrease the flower giving behavior, she adds a positive punishment, which is adding a lecture on money. Okay, so now let's look at some examples of negative punishments. So remember, punishments mean that you're decreasing the rate of behavior, and negative means you're taking something away, you're removing it. and of course to decrease that rate of a behavior. So negative punishments represent when something is actually taken away or removed to decrease the behavior. Let's look at some examples. So in the first example, you might want to, decrease a son talking back to his parents. So to do this, his father takes away his Xbox, for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. So the parents want the talking back to decrease, so they remove something, they take away something, which happens to be the Xbox. All right? Another example. So in this case, if you want to decrease a daughter who is excessively texting, the mother might take away her cell phone, for a month. The mother wants the daughter's texting to go down. She wants it to decrease. So what does she do? She removes something. She removes the cell phone. Okay. And the third example, so if you want to decrease a drunk driver's, drunk driving habit, law enforcement obviously suspends driver's license, right? So society wants to decrease the drinking and driving behavior, so that's when law enforcement takes away something, the driver's license, all right? So in these cases, we can see that, parents, a mom, and law enforcement, they're all removing something. What are they removing? An Xbox, a cell phone, a license. And why? Well, they want to decrease the behavior of talking back, of excessive texting, and of drinking and driving. All right, we're still talking about negative punishments, and as always, these terms have nothing to do with good and bad behaviors. We could take away something to decrease a behavior we consider good, a good behavior. So let's say that you have an unethical company and the boss wants you to cheat people out of their money without directly saying so. But you're a good person and you don't cheat people. So when you do the accounting and you're fair and ethical, your boss doesn't like this. Your boss wants to decrease that behavior that you're fair and ethical. So what does he do? Well, he takes away that super nice office space that you have, right? So the boss wants to decrease the fact that his employee is being ethical. And what he does is he takes away something that you like, the nice office. Okay, so we've talked about reinforcements, positive and negative, and we've talked about punishments, positive and negative. We know that these techniques, these behavior modification techniques, are used all the time by parents, teachers, bosses, significant others, society. Everybody uses them, and they work. But can we use the techniques on ourselves? And if we can, should we? And the answer to the first question is yes, we can use these techniques on ourselves. And the answer to the second question, should we use them on ourselves? Sure, why not? In moderation, they can certainly help us increase the behaviors that we do want to have and decrease the behaviors that we obviously don't want to have. I do think that we should focus a bit more on the reinforcements, the appropriate reinforcements rather than punishments, because of course we don't want to completely demotivate ourselves. But definitely even a few appropriately placed, self-punishments can of course add in our own behavior modification. So when you as a student exhibit a behavior that you want to be exhibiting, certainly you should give yourself that treat, that add something to reinforce that behavior, right? So you can, of course, treat yourself for a goal accomplished, but do make sure that that treat, right, matches the effort expended. So in other words, don't add something like a music concert for showing up to class this morning, but definitely do so, right, if you get all A's and B's this semester. Now, eventually, you want to get to a place where just merely completing your goal is the reward. And this is called intrinsic motivation, right? Intrinsic rewards, which we've talked about before, right? It means that you're doing something because it's self-satisfying with no additional treat or reward attached or anything kind of added. But definitely extrinsic motivation, extrinsic rewards, like adding some kind of a treat, right? Treat yourself can sometimes help push us through particularly our most challenging of our goals, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Okay. For me personally, I do mostly operate from a standpoint of, doing things for the intrinsic rewards. But when I was a student, I definitely remember giving myself a treat or two for what I thought was good student behavior, right? So small incentives along the way, whether it was a movie or dinner or fun nights with friends, you could place those in there to increase behaviors, right? My biggest treats, though, were finishing the semester with all A's and treating myself with a trip. My high school graduation treat was a trip to Puerto Rico, and college graduation trip was to Europe, and my PhD one was to Belize. And so again, it's to increase the likelihood that you'll continue with school and do well and finish your program. So you could definitely add something, the treat. Now, what about punishing ourselves? So you can also give yourself positive and negative punishments to decrease unwanted behaviors that you have. You can add things to your to-do list when you want to decrease a behavior, a bad behavior, a behavior that you think is bad, or you can take away things from yourself when you want to decrease that bad behavior. Now, do I do this myself? And yes, it can help me keep on track, especially long term. So, for example, when I don't fulfill a commitment or a promise that I make to myself, not only do I not accomplish what I set out to do, I sometimes offer myself a punishment as an adult. The punishment makes me take stock of what I didn't do and why I didn't do it. Now, I don't punish myself all the time, as that would be defeating, but sometimes I do give myself like penalties to prevent me from messing up again. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm going to the gym tomorrow morning and instead I bail on it, and not for a good reason, like you're just physically and mentally exhausted. But my punishment is that, I don't earn the right to do the fun thing that I want to do, whatever it is, dinner, movies, watching the bake show. And I can guarantee that the next time that I want to bail on my workout, I won't do it because I know I won't let myself go do that fun thing I want to do later. And if I do punishments, I usually operate from negative punishments, the idea of taking something away. Okay, gang, so we've talked about behaviorism. We've addressed its two forms, classical conditioning and operant conditioning. We've closely examined operant conditioning, and we looked at positive and negative reinforcements. We also looked at positive and negative punishments. And we also discussed ways that we could incorporate these activities into our own lives so that we ensure that we're behaving in, I guess you'd say, in our own best interests. So, my advice to you is don't be afraid to sit down each semester and come up with a list of some of the behaviors you'd like to have and also some of the ones that you want to do away with. And then, if it helps you, go ahead and offer some reinforcements and some punishments to help you get where you want to be. But always keep in mind and focus on the ultimate goal, of course, with intrinsic motivators.